Trina Titus Lozano, and I use biblical wisdom to help guide families through crisis situations, making your home a place of love and peace. Welcome to the Her Show podcast, Home Experience Radio. Hi, y'all. I am Trina, coming to you live from Dallas, recording today at Kingdom Global Ministries. And it's a pleasure to be with you on the podcast today. Thank you for listening. Every single Monday, we'll be releasing a new podcast answering your questions. So email me your question, trina@thehershow.com, Home Experience Radio. Today's question is, at what age do I talk to my kids about sex? Every age. And you might be like, every age? Are you sure every age? You know what? This should never be a strange topic. And you talk about it differently at different ages. And so by the time your child is probably 5 years old and they're learning all kinds of things at school, let me tell you something. Some other kids have seen and experienced things, even at church, even if you're homeschooling, yes, that your kids need to know about, and you need to be the one to tell them. So explain to them what marriage is. Explain to them what a healthy relationship is, because this is not just about sex. Like I said on the last podcast, this is about healthy relationships, okay? This is not a taboo subject. This is not nasty. This is just the way God created us to reproduce. And it's a good thing. In fact, it's a great thing. And so we want to talk about the concept of two becoming one. That's how reproduction happens. The two become one. Get an extension cord, okay? And one extension cord can represent the male, and the other extension cord can represent the female. And you plug them into each other, and then your cord is representing two cords becoming one cord. And that's essentially what sex is. So I want you to take the bad, sinful, gross, impureness out of it and just be logical about it. Be reasonable about it. Use wisdom, okay? And so use wisdom. Sex is the two becoming one. That's what it is. And you need to tell your kids, a lot of people act like sex is gross and dirty. And it is when it is outside of the context of marriage. People use it in a perverted way. Perverted, what does that mean? Well, you don't have to talk about that word specifically, but what you can say is people will take what's just supposed to be a beautiful thing of two becoming one, and when two become one, when you're married, that's how you have children. But when it's done outside of marriage and when people talk about it and act like it's really gross and it's really weird and all that, that's a perversion. That's a perversion. It means it's a messed up version. Perversion is a messed up version. So a 5-year-old can understand that means a messed up version, and it's not right. So when you twist things, when you make things not right, it twists the truth, and it's based on lies. So just tell them, a lot of people lie about what sex is. A lot of people think that it's for their own pleasure and it's for to just get something out of somebody. Ask them about bullying. Explain to your kids what bullying is and how a lot of people bully people sexually. And they'll talk about, they'll want you to get naked, and they'll force you to get naked, and they'll want to touch you in your private parts and things like this. And it's all about bullying. That's really not about sex. That's really about bullying. It's about manipulation. So make sure that this is a constant conversation. You're constantly telling your kids how to say yes to things that are really positive for their age, and how to say no to bullying, how to say no to things that are negative. So whatever you feed grows, whatever you starve dies. So you want to feed the beautiful thing about two becoming one. You want to starve perversion. If you've welcomed perversion into your home through pornography, you've brought a spirit into your home. And your kids, believe it or not, will be affected by that spirit. I read anywhere between 150 to 300 life stories a year. And as my pastoral counseling practice and ministry brings clients in, they write their life story. So as I read hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of life stories, you can see that between the 3 to 5 years of range, many children are exposed to seeing pornography. Of course, the parents don't know it. To being sexually abused by somebody inappropriately touching them or exposing themselves to them. You will see this perversion that enters the innocence of a child and robs them of their innocence at such a young age. But if at this point, if you've already talked to them about sex means two becoming one, and when people are nasty, when people are bullying, when people are being unkind, what they do is they use people's bodies. And that is not only immoral, but it's actually illegal. Anytime somebody does something illegal, it's our responsibility as a good citizen to tell somebody that is an authority. So if somebody does, and then explain the conversation, expand the conversation to not just be about sex, to be about what's illegal, what's immoral. Our first podcast, if you didn't listen to it, go back to the first episode about guilt versus false guilt. See, a child should never have guilt over being sexualized at a young age. They may have gone to church or a Sunday school class and somebody exposed themselves to them, okay, sexually, or touched them sexually, or maybe they were at a neighbor's house, or maybe a babysitter violated them sexually. I want your kids to know in advance that that's illegal, not just immoral, and that they don't get in trouble. And the person doing that may not even get in trouble, but we get in trouble when we don't tell, because then they can keep doing things that are illegal. And as a responsible citizen, as a responsible person, we have to tell the authorities. So if somebody does something illegal to me and bullies me and tries to get me to do something that I feel in my heart is wrong and I know it's wrong, that's bullying. I have to tell the authorities. And if somebody does something to you, and just tell your kids, someday this will happen. Sometimes somebody will do something wrong toward you. They will be mean to you, or they will want you to do things that you don't want to do, or they will touch you in your private areas, and they're not allowed to do that. You have to tell the authorities. And so they're going to tell you not to tell, but you have to tell. Same way that this kind of thing happens to mommy and daddy as well. People will do things to us that are wrong, and then they try to manipulate us and tell us to not tell. But it's wrong if we don't tell. We have to tell the authorities. And so I want you to be talking to your kids at a very young age and give them courage to talk, courage to communicate. They need to know that sex is good. Sex is just a two becoming one, okay? But perversion and immorality and bullying and manipulation is illegal and immoral. Now, as your kids get a little bit older, this is not going to be a surprise, because you're going to continue to talk to them. You're going to continue to ask questions. They're going to continue to ask questions. There's going to be a constant dialogue so that they never feel like, what are my parents going to say if I tell them that this happened, you know? And you need to explain to them what the F word means. They've heard it, and I hope that you're not using it, parents. Really, for the love of the English language, please stop using the F word as an adjective. Just talk with a regular adjective. Say what you mean. That's not even I heard someone say that effing sidewalks were wet. That doesn't even make sense. Like, use a correct adjective for what you're talking, like I say, for the love of English, please. And, but what does that word mean? What does it actually mean? And what is good? What is bad? You need to be teaching your kids from a young age the difference between good, bad, right, wrong, moral, immoral, legal, illegal. They should know these things from a very young age. It's an ongoing conversation so that there's never any surprises. And then as they get older, they will know, as your girls begin to have a menstrual cycle, they will have been prepared that the menstrual cycle is going to be happening in their body. Well, this conversation needs to be happening by the time they're like 9, 10 years old, because their cycle could start anytime between 10, 11, 12 years old. And they need to know, what does that mean? That means that your body's saying that you actually could get pregnant. At this point, you're too young to get pregnant because you're just a child, but this is when your body is producing this extra blood, because someday you're going to be a mommy. And when you're going to be a mommy, how do you get to be a mommy? That's right. When two become one And after you're married and you want to make a family, that's when you'll become a mommy. Because when you have sex and to become one, that is when a seed is planted and it is fertilized and you're pregnant. And it's the most beautiful thing that God created. And so every month you have this extra blood that produces because the baby's going to need that blood. And your body doesn't know if this is going to be the month or not. But your body's always prepared to be able to nourish a child because you're a woman. And it's the most beautiful thing about being a woman. And in fact, that's something else that you need to teach your kids. Men and women, boys and girls. How do we know the difference between a boy and a girl? Same thing with the extension cord because of body parts, because the way that you're made, that's how we know the difference. And it's just scientific. And so it's not up to anyone's opinion. It just is what it is. So these are things that we talk about, but there's no weirdness. There's no freaking out. There's no fear. You don't need to be afraid of anything, of these conversations. Don't be afraid. Don't be grossed out. Just be normal, okay? Just be normal, but don't be afraid of these topics. And then as your kids get to be older older teenagers, I'm going to say a teenager, 13 years old. This is when you'll want to start being really specific with your daughters and say, you know what? This is why we don't sit on a man's lap, because this is what happens sexually is there begins to be these hormones that flow. And as hormones flow, we get turned on. And it's not a bad thing to be turned on. That's the way God created us. And it's wonderful because our whole life we're going to be making love to the person that we marry. And we want to have these feelings of excitement. But now we just have to say it's not time for these feelings of excitement to bring us together sexually. So this is why it's our responsibility that we don't intentionally turn someone on by exposing ourselves and being naked to others. This is why we don't intentionally turn a boy or a man on by sitting on their lap. This is why we have to be very cautious and we have to really protect ourselves from turning somebody else on, and we have to protect them from us turning them on. So it goes both ways, and it's just not a kind thing to do to intentionally try to turn someone else on when it's really not the right time to be in a sexual relationship. So talk to them about being turned on sexually. They need to know about that from you, and they need to know it's not bad. It's the way God made us, but they do need to be taught how to manage it and what to do, what not to do. This is part of the training. When you do not do any training, it's a problem because then they have to learn. I had a man tell me recently with his wife in a counseling setting that he learned about sex through pornography. Like that's how he learned about sex. Well, he's not the only one. Are you kidding me? That's maybe the way you learned about sex too. That's very unfortunate because that's a perversion. That's not the way you're supposed to learn about sex because that's a perversion, okay? And married sex isn't like pornography. It's just not the same. And it's not supposed to be the same, but it's supposed to be a beautiful, enjoyable thing. So that is kind of a long answer to this question. But the question is, what age do I talk to my kids about sex? An ongoing conversation from about 3 years old through until they get married. So God bless you today. Thank you for joining me on The Her Show. You can ask me any question, Trina@thehershow.com. Email me. I will be back next Monday, and I hope you tune in and listen again. God bless you. Hugs and high fives.